All right, good afternoon, everybody. This is William Mann, Mayor of Temple City, and today on Facebook Live we have the great pleasure of having Kathy Burrows, our Director of Parks and Recreation. And Kathy, you've been with us for how many years now?
I've actually been here over 30 years, about 32 years full-time, but I hate to say it, but I started as a rec leader in the late 70s and did about 5 years as a rec leader and then moved on to another city and then came back in 1985 and have been here since then.
Wow, great. That's amazing. So with that rich experience comes a lot of great historical perspective and institutional knowledge that allows us to better understand what our Parks and Recreation Department is all about. And so today we're here to not only answer a couple of questions that we've received on our Facebook posts regarding our Parks and Recreation Department, but also we kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into some of the issues, and Kathy is here to share with us a lot of those great stories and great perspectives. So I wanted to start today's session off with one question we got from Lisa Van Bieber Grimaldi, and that question is actually a question that we get very often for quite some time, and the question is, why don't we have more parks and green space? And so perhaps Kathy, you can maybe share a little bit about what's happened in Temple City over the last couple 20-30 years or so, and maybe share a little bit of your own personal perspective on not just Temple City but sort of just Southern California in general with respect to the lack of green space that we have in the city.
Absolutely, and again, that is a great question and one we're constantly asked and one we struggle with as well on a regular basis in the Parks and Recreation Department. Just a little bit of a background, Temple City is considered park poor. There are actually standards that identify how many acres per 1,000 residents communities should have. State standards are relatively high, about 10 acres per 1,000. In LA County, which is primarily suburban, urban, built out, it's about 3 acres per 1,000 residents. Here in Temple City, we have half an acre per 1,000 residents, so we are far below the average. With that being said, how do we get more park space? That is the biggest challenge we have. Several years ago in 2014, our City Council directed staff to move forward with a Parks and Open Space Master Plan that really tried to address that very issue. And in that, we were looking at some maybe innovative ways that we could increase park space without building a new park. As most of you know, Temple City is primarily residential, and it is primarily built out. There are no vacant lots, or very few vacant lots, where we could put a new park. So that challenged us to look at different options. Some of them that came out of the Parks and Open Space Master Plan included joint use agreements with other entities or license agreements that allow us to use other either public or private facilities. We looked at the wells in the city. There are several water companies that have wells that are just sitting there with a small well on a vacant piece of property. We talked to the water companies, and unfortunately those are all active wells, so they don't allow public use of it. But those are the types of things that we looked at. We've also talked a bit about the need for parks and how they have changed over the years. And our parks more needed now than they were in the 60s or 70s. I personally agree they are a little bit more needed. When I was growing up, most families in the 60s, 50s, 60s, 70s had large yards, very big large yards. And I was lucky that we actually had a couple of yards on our property. We had our own swing set, a playhouse, trees to climb. But we also, in that era, the kids played outside. We would play ball out on the street. We would use the sidewalks, the front yards, the streets for recreational areas. I was 2 blocks away from an elementary school and would walk down the street to play on the playground equipment there. Over the course of the years, society has changed and the times have changed. Our school sites aren't normally open to the public on a 24-hour basis, 7 days a week anymore, and there's very valid reasons for that. Parents don't often allow their children to play out in the front yard or out on the street unsupervised, and there's, again, very valid reasons for that. So your parks have in essence, become the safe places to go and play. The other thing that we've seen over the years is the but the craze of the video games and those types of indoor activities that kept the kids inside instead of taking them outside. And so we have now a problem, and it's nationwide, of childhood obesity. And so it's so important for people to come out and get their exercise. And if you have a smaller yard now, there's less opportunity for that. So it's really important for the green space for the kids to come, and the parents and everyone to come out and just, be in a park in a serene setting with nature and providing opportunities to get exercise in.
That's good. That's good. Wow, that's a fantastic perspective, especially considering I really like what you said about how the times have changed in terms of how parents as well as kids view sort of their own open space, from not just at home in their own backyards to out in the streets, where maybe parents felt more secure and safe about having kids roam the street. And nowadays we know that has changed quite a bit. And I also liked what you said about there's a lot of activities that are indoors now, and so I always found it very interesting that when we had surveyed a lot of residents about what they would like to see as part of the Parks and Open Space Master Plan, that free Wi-Fi was actually one of the items that was listed. And so, 10 years ago, you wouldn't even have considered that free Wi-Fi would have been an issue. And so I think this sort of evolution or paradigm change in how not only do we, the way we view the open space has changed. And I think this paradigm shift kind of is a good segue to one of the other questions that we've received from our Facebook post. And this question comes from Chris Stratton. Question is, I've heard that the Eaton Wash, which is the flood control channel west of the Kmart shopping center, may soon be developed to allow pedestrians and bicycles. Can you confirm that this is happening? And if so, give us a sense of when it may be open to the public. It would be a wonderful asset to our community. Now, from the I guess the information that is available to us, the entity that is actually considering and spearheading that potential change is actually Los Angeles County. And as some of you may or may not know, the county also has a bike master plan that goes throughout the entire unincorporated LA County. And as some of you may know, the flood control channel is property of the LA County Flood Control District. And so we happen to have some flood control channels that go through our city. And what's also interesting about this question is that we recently adopted a brand new general plan that sort of dictates land use as well as how we envision different parts of our city sort of evolving and developing over time. And one of the items that was identified in the general plan was potentially Eaton Wash being developed into a pedestrian or bicycle friendly environment. And so this kind of ties into the paradigm shift that we were kind of talking about. Is we're in a very built out environment, and so we don't have a lot of large open vacant lots just sitting around waiting for the city to snatch it up and develop into the next Live Oak Park, or even we don't even really have any lots the size of Temple City Park right here outside City Hall. So that's been one of the challenges, is how can we transform the space that we currently have and repurpose it for public use and public benefit. And so thank you for asking that question. In terms of the timeline for that is still unsure, because one, it is sort of a little bit out of our control. We are trying to reach out and see if there's a component where we can kind of join in and enhance that space if it is going to be developed by the county, to make it more than just a pedestrian walkway. Maybe there is opportunities to enhance it and add in, mini parks behind that space. So there is a lot of potential, but at the same time there is also a lot of uncertainty, because a lot of decision making and as well as the money funding that is pushing that is a little bit out of our control. And so actually we talked a little bit about evolving needs and how we view parks and recreation has changed over the years. Kathy, could you also give us a little bit of your perspective on sort of the current master plan that we have that includes our facilities and our physical infrastructure, and what are some of the, not just the funding challenges that we are facing, but also sort of maybe give us sort of like a timetable of how you envision the next couple of years unfolding, and what our residents can kind of look forward to new things in our parks.
Absolutely. And we've mentioned our Parks and Open Space Master Plan a few times, and part of that plan was some of the components were to develop facility master plans for our 2 existing parks. Interestingly, when we did our Parks and Open Space Master Plan, one of the questions we asked our residents was, if you had $100, what would you rather see the money spent on? And there were some different options. Some were a new park, different amenities, or to develop or redevelop our existing parks. And the overwhelming majority of our residents said they would like to see that money go towards keeping up or adding new amenities to our existing parks, interestingly enough. And so with that in mind, we instituted, or we undertook a project to develop specific master plans for Live Oak Park as well as Temple City Park, taking into account future needs, what our residents are looking for. And we had a couple community meetings, and we met with specific park user groups to try and gauge what was the best use of the existing space we have. And we found some interesting things out about that. We know that over the years, our parks are changing and the use of the parks are changing. Where in the 70s and 80s, the predominant use of the parks was organized sports, organized athletics. Across the country, participation in those organized sports has declined. And so do we still maintain those types of facilities? And we assert, yes, we still need those facilities, but there are other maybe competing uses now that we need to take into account. We have a lot of groups that are quasi-organized that use our park facilities on a regular basis in the morning for dance, for exercise, for Tai Chi. But there really isn't adequate space and a good location for them to participate.